Great song choice, Cassie. Welcome everybody. As
This
always,
this was all you, Matt. I don't want to steal your thunder.
I'm trying to give you credit for the great work that you do, and you're throwing it right back at me. Um, thank you everybody for being here. We have an awesome guest today, so it's going to be a great call. As always, I would ask that if you can, please put on your cameras. It is going to be more fun for myself and Bridget and everybody else involved if we can talk to real human beings instead of black boxes with names. I don't care if you have bedhead. I don't care if you're at home. As long as you are decent, we would appreciate cameras. So, that being said, this is going to be our last Wealthy Agent webinar of the year. And I think we have a really good one. Um, so, first, I'm just going to do a quick introduction, and then Bridget is going to correct everything I get wrong and fill in the gaps for me. So, Bridget has been in real estate for over 20 years. I think it was about 22 years. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
22 years in the business, works in the beautiful Southern California, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Is in Gary's individual agent top 100, which is a massive achievement, and is on track this year to be an MREA agent as a solo agent, which is another major accomplishment. So, tons of experience here, tons of success here. And we're going to lean into a very specific topic. So, the call today is about working a specific niche. Niche is a niche, or niche?
I've heard it all the ways.
Okay, tomato, tomato, I guess. Um, so Bridget's specialty is specifically working to help homeowners that are going through divorce. And I think this is a niche she not only has a tremendous amount of experience with, but she's really got a process and a system. And she's going to go through and educate us on a lot of that. And we're going to chit chat a little bit before she dives into that. But here's the kind of umbrella I want to put over things before we get going. Divorce might be a niche you're interested in being in, or maybe it's a niche that you are in, servicing them, not getting one. Um, what I do want you to listen for is regardless whether or not you think this might be one of the legs, right? One of your lead generation strategies, listen for the things that are duplicatable, regardless of what your niche is, right? Because the reality is, once you identify a niche, the manner in which you attack that niche, there's similarities regardless of what the niche is. So, as you're listening, take in the specific knowledge around her specific niche, but also listen for the patterns, like the systems, the processes, and the things that could really translate to any niche that you choose to pursue. So, that being said, Bridget, can you give us a little bit of an idea of just who you are as a human? Like, what'd you do before real estate? How'd you get into real estate? And what's your world like outside of real estate?
Thank you, Matt, for having me today. I have been in real estate for almost 23 years now. I got in the business when I was 23 years old. So nobody needs to do the math on how old I am. I'm obviously 25. And I wasn't particularly passionate about real estate. It was just kind of something that I fell into. And over the years, I have realized that there's a lot of focus in our industry about B2C, focusing on open houses, how to catch leads, how to follow up with leads, and all of that. Over half my business is divorce listings. And so I have a traditional business and I have a divorce business, and they really are two different businesses. I treat them very differently. I handle them, I have different protocols, which we'll get into today. But one thing that I want you to think about is we talk a lot about how to get more buyer leads, how to get more seller leads. I'm not going to teach you that today because I do not get listing leads. I get appointed by attorneys or judges to sell a home. Oftentimes, before I talk to the parties, before they know what my commission is, before I know whether my marketing is fancy or not, or any of that. So it's a different way of thinking about it. And even if you're saying to yourself, well, gosh, I don't want to get into divorce stuff, I don't want anything to do with that. Believe me, I said the same thing many years. I fought moving into this niche. But even if divorce is not the route you want to take, think about B2B type businesses. We as an industry do not focus a lot on how can we build relationships with businesses. And I'm not just talking about your vendors, right? Hopefully your vendors are sending you business, but what about probate attorneys? What about bankruptcy attorneys? What about CPAs, financial advisors? I don't mean do you have a database of them? I mean, how do you build relationships so that you become the go-to person for all of their clients when needing to buy or sell a home? So that's what we're going to talk about today.
I love that. So I got to jump in and add a couple bullets to that. Number one, so business to business when I was actively selling was one of my funnels and one of my favorites. Number one, I just like hanging out with business people because they're
Mhm.
interesting and I enjoy getting to know them. Number two, business people have databases. And when you build a relationship, their database becomes your database and your database becomes their database. So massive advantage there. And number three, business owners tend to understand reciprocation, right? Like it's just kind of natural when you're a business owner, you understand the world that that other person lives in. And when they help you, you want to help them, which are the three reasons why that business to business relationships can be so valuable to our business. So I particularly love this conversation. Bridget, I think you have some slides to walk through your
Yes.
specific niche and your specific strategies. So I'm going to let you run with that, and then we're going to leave some time at the end for some Q&A also.
Okay, wonderful. It looks like the chat or the host has been disabled for screen sharing.
Cassie is on it.
Oh, perfect. All right, looks like we are good to go. Okay, can you all see my slides here?
Yep,
Okay, so
yep.
as I mentioned, I'm Bridget Potterton. I'm in San Diego, and I'm going to talk about a couple of different topics today. The first one I want to talk about is what is a certified divorce real estate expert? This is very much a complex niche to work in. And so, if you really want to work with attorneys, particularly family law attorneys, there's a lot to know. So, rather than just going in blindly like I initially did, I'm going to share with you a little bit about what I learned along the way and how I became a certified divorce real estate expert. I'm also going to talk about 5 things to stop doing in your business today if you are taking divorce listings currently or plan to at some point. Which, by the way, if you say, I don't want to do divorce listings, the statistics show that your past clients are going to get divorced. If they haven't already, it's going to happen. With the divorce rate in the United States being what it is, your clients are going to need you to help them with family law related transactions. Um, I'm going to talk about 5 ways to get in with the family law community if that's something that you're interested in. I'm going to talk about divorce listings, how they're being done now, and how I think they are going to happen in the future, and how I'm already starting to see them happen. I also am going to teach you a couple of secrets. One of the ways that I got in with family law attorneys is about 3.5 years ago. I became the first broker in my area that I'm aware of that learned and got trained on how to teach continuing education classes to attorneys. So if there's time, I will explain what my class looks like and all of that. And if you want to learn a little bit more, you can find me on the MREA podcast with Jason Abrams. I can't remember what episode it was, but if you look at MREA podcast, it was from like maybe a year and a half ago or something like that. So first, what is a certified divorce real estate expert? How do we differ from a traditional realtor? Well, I still have a traditional business, as I mentioned. I went through a pretty intense class about 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, I guess by now, and it completely changed the way I did divorce listing transactions. Back then, it took 6 months to get. Since then, they've switched it. Now it's like a 12-week class, but it's a really intense training. Not only did it teach me a divorce listing process, which is completely different from a traditional listing process. And we'll touch on that a little bit. But it also taught me how to be an expert witness, how to provide declarations in court, how to deal with alizers, which is something that only family law attorneys and sometimes probate attorneys seem to know what it is. That's not a big thing. So if you've never heard of it, don't worry about it. It's essentially when you have a non-compliant party or somebody who is incarcerated or has disappeared on you, where you have the court sign on their behalf. It is a it is quite complex, but that's the simplified version of it. I also was trained in how to deal with high conflict personalities. Even outside of divorce, I'm sure you all have dealt with difficult clients, things that can help deal with people who have high conflict personalities and high conflict transactions. Having restraining orders is just another Tuesday morning for me. I don't have them personally. I mean, I deal with cases where there are restraining orders. I have special protocols in place for clients where there's restraining orders because that can be challenging with showings and things like that. One thing, I'm not going to spend too much time talking about this particular class because they only allow a certain number of people per area. So I'm here in San Diego. We have more CDREs than anywhere else, and I think we have 6 or 7. And there's a wait list of a bunch of agents in my market who are interested in that. So if you want to know more about becoming a CDRE, we don't have time right now, but reach out to me later. I'll give you a link on where you can go to get more information. But what I liked was they don't just we have 20,000 realtors in San Diego, and there's, like I said, only like 6 of us, I think, or maybe 6 or 7. So it's a really small niche to make sure that every family law attorney in every area is covered and has access to a CDRE. So let's talk about divorces, what to do. Now, show of hands, how many of you have taken a divorce listing before? You can either raise your hand or just put it in the thing. Okay. Looks like some of you have, some of you have not. Okay. Okay, great. Well, I'm going to share with you a couple of tips. First one, number one, if you don't remember anything else we talk about, do not disclose divorce listings. There is no reason as a listing agent you should ever disclose to a potential buyer or a buyer's agent that your client is going through a divorce. That is not a material fact that should be disclosed. Matter of fact, by doing so, I would argue that you're violating their fair housing protections. Now, I know fair housing is all about buyers, but why shouldn't our sellers be provided those same protections? There's no reason a buyer needs to know that there is a divorce happening because, as an industry and collectively as a society, what do we think of when somebody says, oh, that listing is a divorce listing? Anybody want to unmute or put in the chat? What do people think?
Two opinions. Either the house has bad juju or the sellers are under duress of some sort and they're going to lose money and people are going to leverage their negative situation against them. They don't need it.
Num That's right. Number two, absolutely 100%. People think divorce listings equal distressed sales. And the reality is that's not the case. And as an industry, I feel like we have a duty to almost make sure they get more money than our traditional clients because they have to split it usually. It's not always split 50-50, but it's split somehow. And so these parties have to be able to move on with their lives and figure out how to financially go forward from there. So there's a lot of pressure in this space to do that. So I do get a lot of pushback. Oh, but Bridget, I don't want to lie, and I get that. I don't want you to lie either. But let me ask you this: in your area, does every single divorce that happens that involves real estate require that the home be sold? Yes or no?
No.
No. No. So divorce is not requiring the sale. It's usually a financial reason that they cannot sell. So they're downsizing, upsizing, moving out of the area, moving to a different school district, whatever it is, or they're just getting out of the market. They've decided they're getting out of the market, right? There's a lot of reasons. So feel free to provide a reason. Just don't disclose that it's a divorce. Okay, number two, before I get to this one, stop going after people getting divorced. I want to give a quick minute. If any of you have a sensitivity or a trigger of talking about domestic violence, I would recommend that you mute me for about the next 2 minutes while I explain this. Okay, so I'm going to share a story with you that one of the attorneys who taught in the CDRE program shared with me when I was going through the program about 5 years ago. And it just was so impactful to me that I vowed to share it with every single realtor I could in the country. So there's a lot of realtors that will get listings from RedX or from their title company of people who are going through a divorce. That's not uncommon. Maybe some of you have done that. I'm going to share a story of something that happened. So one of the attorneys that trains us in the CDRE program, she had a client come in. She was being abused and both physically and emotionally by her husband. Um, she was thinking about getting divorced and she decided not to. Then she got pregnant. So she stayed. And after the baby was born, unfortunately, the abuse continued. And finally, she started to worry not only about her safety, but for the safety of her newborn child. So she decided to hire an attorney, which she did. She hired one of our attorneys on staff at the CDRE program. And the attorney said, "Okay, well, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Let's figure this out." And she said, "Well, I don't have family nearby. I don't really have friends here anymore. It's not uncommon for a abuser to isolate their victim. And so she didn't really have anywhere to go. She didn't have help. So the attorney said, well, you need to figure out somewhere to go for you and your child if you file. So they kind of came up with a plan and she figured out a plan. So then they filed for divorce. So fast forward, when you file for divorce, it becomes public in your courthouse. Okay. That is how your title companies, that is how companies that sell you information, that's where they get it from. Okay. So Johnny on the spot realtor here in Southern California is doing his daily calls of people who are going through a divorce. I have no idea what he said, but he calls and the husband is home and he answers the phone. I don't know why the husband hadn't been served yet, but for whatever reason, he was in the dark until the realtor called and told, and what I don't know what he said, but essentially the guy was able to figure out that his wife was filing for divorce. The husband explodes on the realtor and then sits at home waiting for his wife to come home. Wife comes home with the baby and husband explodes all over again. Now, I'm happy to tell you that that was 5 years ago and they are now divorced and she and the baby, I'm sure, are doing fine. But can you imagine if they hadn't been okay? All because of a reckless realtor's conversation. So if you are going to work in this space, which I hope you'll consider, I hope that you'll do it the responsible way and be careful about going after people who are going through a divorce. You don't know what words you could say to somebody that could trigger them and something bad could happen. Okay. So I know we just got really dark for a minute, but I want you to
Yeah, that
understand
was
kind of what we're dealing with here as certified divorce real estate experts. I promise the rest of this presentation is going to be more uplifting, but it's helpful for you to kind of understand some of the stuff I'm dealing with. Um,
I mean, as much as that's a heavy story, I think it's an important message to deliver. Because without the experience, I mean, you could see how somebody might not connect the dots of how they could unintentionally create a situation like that.
Absolutely. And I'm sure the realtor is a nice person and didn't mean any harm, but it is what it is. Okay, so number three, stop sending attorneys generic real estate spam. I think a lot of times realtors are intimidated by attorneys. We don't know what to send them. We don't know what information is going to be helpful. So we send them maybe our just sold postcards in hopes that we'll get lucky, or maybe our newsletter. Your clients, your sphere, your farm, they love you. They love that you send out a newsletter about where the best Christmas lights in your town are. But that's not valuable to attorneys. So, what is valuable to attorneys? I'll give you some examples of some things that I've sent out to attorneys. Okay, so last year, you all are very familiar with the Sitzer Burnett lawsuit. I sent an email out to my attorney database last August when all the changes went into effect and we got new contracts. And you might be asking, well, why would a family law attorney care about the Sitzer Burnett case? Um, well, there was a lot of misinformation in mainstream media. You know, you were seeing it on the headlines of "Gone are the days of 6% commissions," and everybody's going to discount. You guys remember that, right? And and I know that's not really what the lawsuit was about. It wasn't about how much we were getting paid. It was about disclosure on how commissions were done. And so what I did was I sent an email to my attorneys explaining how commissions were going to be done in the future. And the reason why that's so valuable to family law attorneys is sometimes in their court order, they want to put what the commission amount is. I just got into an argument with a kind of a heated conversation with a family law attorney I didn't know, that I hadn't worked with before. And he was trying to beat me down on commissions. And I said, I'm sorry. I don't discount on family law cases, and I don't discount my commission at all. I'm full service. I go above and beyond, and he just didn't understand not putting in a cap on commission in a court order. And here in my state, I know you guys are in Connecticut and kind of all over too, right? You guys are all over.
Yeah. There's people
Okay.
on probably largely from New England, but
Okay.
scattered about.
Yeah, so every state has slightly different rules, but here in California, there's no way we could do that. You can't cap out my commission because the problem is I don't know what the buyer's agent's going to request on the purchase agreement, which is where our requests come from now. If an attorney puts in my court order that I'm to sell the home and I have to cap the commission at a certain amount, but then we get an offer from somebody that's 50,000 higher asking for a quarter of a percent above that capped amount, well, guess what? The attorneys just screwed the client because the court order says that. So they need to be educated. There's a lot about real estate that family law attorneys just don't know. And we as an industry need to do a better job of raising our hand and saying, excuse me, let me explain how that's going to play out in real estate. And we have to be advocates for our clients because they don't know any better, right? Unless they're realtors themselves, which sometimes they are, unfortunately. Okay, number 4, stop sending contracts and excess communication to attorneys. So if you're already working in a divorce case or you have attorneys that you have relationships with, you need to make a decision on how involved your attorneys are going to be. Now, in general, I only include them in the bare minimum because every single time I press send on an email or call an attorney, that costs our clients money, right? So let's say you have a listing contract signed by the clients and you're just trying to be a good realtor and get in with good with the attorneys. Well, guess what? If you send that copy of that contract to both attorneys, both of their attorneys are going to charge their clients to review the contract. And they're not real estate attorneys, so they may not be familiar with your listing contract. So if it takes them, let's say, 3 hours to review it, they're going to bill your clients for 3 hours for each attorney. So just by pressing send, you might have just cost your clients $2,000, just like that. So I never send contracts to the attorneys unless there's an extreme reason, like I have a party that's not complying with the order and the attorney says, send it to me and I will get my client to sign. But I really don't do that. I also don't involve them in a lot of the little nuances. Our job as certified divorce real estate experts or as a divorce expert is to take the headache away from the attorneys. The house, a lot of times, is the biggest headache financially because that's where everybody's money is tied up. So you have to remember that your job is you're essentially the aspirin to the attorney's headache of the sale of the marital home. And then number 5, stop introducing yourself as an agent. I don't mean that literally. There's nothing wrong with being a realtor. I'm a proud realtor. But what I realized was I needed to shift into how can I introduce myself as an expert? So I'm sure before I became a CDRE, I had some sloppy intro to an attorney. Oh, hi, I'm Bridget Potterton. I'm from Keller Williams. And, call me when you have a client that needs to sell their house. And, I'm sure it was something real sloppy. But I'll share with you what I say now. So, hi, my name is Bridget Potterton, and I'm a certified divorce real estate expert. I help the family law community when there's real property that needs to be sold. And usually that is a quick enough intro to when they ask questions. Oh, do you do appraisals? Blah, blah, blah. And I say, I can do a market valuation. I do provide those. I don't like to do them because sometimes that conflicts me out of selling the home, especially if I have to testify. But I do those on occasion. I explain to them that I'm also a trained expert witness, that I am a trained third party neutral. Traditional realtors are not trained in that. And that is something that is really important for a lot of attorneys. They don't necessarily understand the difference. And so that's something I've had to train them on is no, as a traditional realtor, you're not necessarily a neutral, particularly if only one person is on title, then we're definitely not neutral because our client is whoever is on title. If the other person's not on title, that is an absolute nightmare for family law attorneys. And it's one of those spaces where real estate law and family law, we do not always play well together in the sandbox, and we have to figure out the way to be the go between to make it work. Okay, so let's talk about how do we get business from the family law community. So there's a couple different things that you can do. In your area, there is, I believe, a second Saturday. And if you're in bigger cities, you probably do have a second Saturday. Second Saturday was actually started here in San Diego many years ago, and it was essentially a couple hour class for people who were either getting divorced or were thinking about filing for divorce. It's an interesting class, and you, as a realtor, can apply to speak there. I would recommend that before you go speaking to try to get business, that you have a good amount of experience under your belt. I have considered speaking there. I'm not currently speaking there because that's not really my focus, but one of the challenges that I saw when I went to go check one out was that it was very apparent to me that the realtor who was speaking at this has probably never done a divorce listing before. So the barrier to entry in that space, I was disappointed at how low it was. So if you're going to speak to them, particularly because people who come to that tend to not have an attorney, which means they're extremely vulnerable, make sure that you aren't just giving them generic real estate advice and that it's custom advice specific to a family law real estate transaction. But that's something you could do. It doesn't cost any money to be a speaker. So if that's something you're passionate about and you love speaking, I would consider looking into that. Number two, Vesta. Vesta is also a nationwide program. That is similar to Second Saturday in that you're essentially training the general population. You're doing it in a pod. So you're teaching kind of similar to Second Saturday. You're co-teaching with a divorce attorney, a divorce coach, a certified divorce financial analyst, which is essentially a financial advisor who has a specialty background in divorce. Sometimes a certified divorce lending professional, a lender who has a background and a designation in divorce. So you're kind of co-teaching classes together. That one has more of a networking component, so you could build relationships with family law services, family law attorneys, coaches, all that stuff as well. That being said, it is expensive. Last I checked, I think it was like $500 a month. So maybe Second Saturday might be a good start at first, and then you can think about that. Number
To
three,
be clear, Bridget, these are things that exist, networks that exist all over the country.
yes, absolutely. And then number three, collaborative law. Collaborative law exists within your family law courthouse. Collaborative law is kind of the in between of litigated, higher conflict divorces and mediation. And mediation can also be high conflict, by the way. I've had some pretty crazy doozy mediations. Collaborative law is kind of in between. They want to try to work together to stay out of court and settle out of court, which is an incredible program because our courthouses are so bogged down. The family law cases, when I go to court and I see them setting the time for the next hearing, I mean, it is depressing how long it takes for these clients to get a hearing because there are so many tiny little things that they have to go to court for, and so many people don't have attorneys that they just waste the court's time. They just don't know any better. It's a very much a not a great system. And so collaborative law essentially takes it out of the court, and you work with attorneys, you can work with realtors. You do need to be trained in collaborative law. In my area of San Diego, they actually don't allow realtors to join their collaborative law group. So my workaround is I joined the international collaborative law group practice, and I'm probably going to go in January to get some training up in Northern California, and then I'll be able to still work with the collaborative law attorneys. I already know a lot of them, but I'll be able to help them better with their collaborative law practices. So that's something that, as a certified divorce real estate expert, if that's something you want to do, that this is something totally separate that you would need to get training on. A lot of attorneys will ask if you have collaborative law training, which right now I don't. So that's one thing that's on my 2026 calendar. And then number four, joining attorney or lawyers clubs. Just because you see the word attorney or lawyer, don't assume you can't join. Think of it like our association, our local association of realtors. Is everybody who joins the association a realtor?
No,
No, no. We have a ton of vendors, right? We have pest control companies and lenders and probate
that's
attorneys sometimes, all sorts of stuff. So just because you see the word attorney or lawyer, don't assume that you can't join. And then number five, the low hanging fruit. Ask your sphere for an introduction. Chances are you probably know several people right now going through a divorce or who have recently gone through one. Ask them if they can make a connection with you and the attorney. Don't ask for the attorney's phone number. Don't ask for their email. Just ask for an email introduction. You are much more likely to get a coffee with them if you have a direct request from somebody saying, "Hey, I want you to meet my real estate friend. She can help you." And then you kind of do, "Hi, can we grab 15 minutes of coffee?" Remember, attorneys work very different from us. They work on billable hours. So if you're able to get a 30-minute coffee from somebody who charges $300 an hour, maybe in your area it's more. In mine, it's more like 400 to 500, but let's just say 300. Ask yourself, if I can get an attorney to go to coffee with me for 30 minutes, can I provide $150 worth of value? Can I provide that in 30 minutes? Because if not, you just wasted their time. So it's not just about getting the introduction, it's what are you going to say? How can you stand out? And the number one way that I'm able to stand out is by explaining my designation, my background, and my training. That is by far the best way from everything else that I've shared with you, the best way that I'm able to stand out because there's only I think 150 of us around the country. A lot of attorneys have not heard of us. Even here in San Diego, there's attorneys that haven't heard of me. And so when I'm able to meet them or get an introduction, they're like, huh, I didn't even know you existed. Or a lot of the times, the common thing I get is, oh my gosh, where were you 2 months ago when I had this nightmare case and the clients went through 5 realtors and we couldn't get the home sold, right? So the best way is to get direct introductions. Okay, are there any questions in the chat? I want to just make sure I'm not. Okay. So let's talk about divorce listings then and now. So for some of you that have gotten them, there's a good chance maybe you got them from a referral of a past client sphere. Maybe it was your past client. Those are always tricky. I know I've unfortunately had to do a few of those as well. And that's always tough. Getting calls from regular marketing. Maybe you're known as like the neighborhood expert in your farm. And so they're going to call you, whether it's a probate or a divorce or a distress sale, you're the go-to person. Absolutely. It looks like we have our hand raised. Yes. Did you have a question?
I do really quickly.
Yeah.
To be a certified SD, certified divorce real, whatever, that.
real
Um,
estate expert.
Thank you. That designation should probably come first. Or are you saying that you can join some of these groups and participate in some of these social networking pieces without that? Or is it really more important to get that first before you come in? Like, so do you want to come in as an expert and you want to put your best foot forward, but also like the sooner you get out there, kind of the better too for relationship building. Like personally, I'm in the middle of a divorce right now. So it's like, ooh, cool. Only because it's kind of a good time to talk to as many attorneys as possible because there's like an in a way too to have an actual conversation that feels authentic as a consumer, but I want to come off as an expert. So what should you do first? I just want to make sure we don't cart before a horse, or I don't cart before a horse.
I love that you asked that question. So I'll tell you, I started working with attorneys before I had any designations. Um,
Okay.
I I was really only working with a few, like maybe three at that time. And one of them in particular said, Bridget, if you're going to continue to work with us, you need a designation. You need some background knowledge in this space. And so to attorneys, education is very important. I will also say that the way that I approach them before I learned from the CDRE program how to approach them was a disaster. I failed really bad. Matter of fact, one attorney, I had revised an email to attorneys. I was going to go to coffee and lunch with all the attorneys I could afford, right? I put together the most brilliant email. It was going to change lives, right? All the things. And I remember getting an email back from one attorney. His name's Glenn. I will never forget this. And Glenn just ripped me a new one in my email. And I was so distraught that I was like, maybe I just won't do divorce. This is just clearly I'm out of my element. Like, this is a disaster. I got one person to agree to go to coffee with me, but she was retiring. I think she was just bored. So that was it. So I did not have a lot of success on my own. That doesn't mean you won't. That's just my experience. Once I became a certified divorce real estate expert and I approached them in a much different way, then the success changed. And by the way, that attorney that I told you, Glenn, that traumatized me in that email, he
You now
doesn't
work with them, don't you?
he doesn't know he doesn't remember that email and I've never reminded him. And today he's one of my biggest supporters.
Hmm.
Yeah, he actually has already he introduced me to his daughter to help her buy a property. And so it's so funny to come full circle. But again, I think that it's not just approaching the attorneys, it's about the right approach. And the CDRE program, the last entire month of it is all how to approach attorneys. Here is what you give them. Go here on this date, do this, do that, give them this, then send this, then follow up with this. It's basically a plug and play system. So I didn't even have to think. Um, I unfortunately am not that organized. So on my own, I never would have come up with that. Maybe some of you would, but for me personally, I need the easy button. I need the plug and play system. Just tell me what to do when, and I'll do it, right? Great question. Thanks for sharing that. Um, and then, so we've talked a little bit about how you get divorce listings now for a lot of you and how I think it's going to happen in the future. I think that a lot more of us are going to get assigned to cases. It used to be, and I know a lot of realtors are like, well, that's not how it happens in my market. Well, yeah, you need to change the way that family law transactions are done in your market. That's one of my biggest goals as a CDRE is I want to change the way it's done in San Diego County. I'm training my attorneys. You need to appoint me to sell the house and don't just leave it to the parties. I now have and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. Now have my own court order that essentially stipulates me as the uh, court appointed expert to sell the home. And so my attorneys know that I'll just give that to them and that's the easy button, right? Then they don't have to worry about all this and that, all the things that they normally have to put in. Also having your name in MSA. So an MSA is a marital settlement agreement. Sometimes they're called a marital settlement term sheet. Your state, depending on what state you're in, might call it something different, but that's when they have a settlement outside of court or they go through mediation. And then you can also be judge appointed. That is very rare in my area, but in some jurisdictions, that's not uncommon. Judges in my area don't seem to want to get involved in that. My experience has been almost all of my referrals are coming from the attorneys. Sometimes a judge pro tem or a mediator. Judge pro tem is essentially in translate it into the real estate world, it would be like an arbitration judge. Like if somebody was suing you or suing your client and you have to go to like a little arbitration, it would be like that, where they act as an appointed judge, but they don't sit on the bench. So that's where I think the future of divorce listings is going to be. I think it's going to be less about people choosing their last realtor to sell the home and more about choosing a divorce expert or somebody who has a background in that space. Okay,
Bridget,
so
can I jump in with just a clarifying question?
sure.
So my experience in divorce situations without this mechanism in place is the argument over what realtor is going to represent the home is a
Mhm.
one of the battles, right? Because typically each spouse has a person, they both think that person will be loyal to the other
Mhm.
spouse, therefore the other one doesn't want to use them. So that statement you just made, sometimes it's court appointed, but more often it's the attorney. How does that play out when both parties have an attorney? Who ends up having the control, if you will, over that appointment?
That's a great question. And there is no like guaranteed specific process or whatever. Oops. There is no 100% like this is how it's going to happen. I'll tell you the most common ways I see it happen. Number one, yesterday I got a call from a lady. She's got a multi-million-dollar property. She is interviewing three names because her husband's buddy, his golf buddy, is a realtor that, of course, wants to sell it. Husband wants to use him.
Mhm.
Her response is, hell no, we're not using your friend. She's smart. He's not going to be a neutral, right? And he's probably not trained. I don't know who he is, but I'm guessing he's probably not a trained neutral. So she's saying no. So her attorney requested that she find three agents to put on a list. That's really common. Sometimes they ask for five. So what's going to happen is she's going to put three names on the list, including mine, and then the opposing counsel is going to give it to his client, and he's going to pick. He's going to pick out of the three names. Occasionally they disagree, and then I've had some where each side gives three names, then they can't agree, and then the attorneys just say, "All right, screw it, bring in Bridget."
Yeah.
I've had some where they have a judge pro tem that tells them, I don't care who your realtor friends are, but you need to use a neutral. You have to use a neutral. And so a lot of times that's how I get in. I have a case right now I'm working on where I think it's the husband's sister is a very well-known realtor here in San Diego County. And but he was pretty cool about it. He was like, look, I get it. This is a bad divorce. Like, obviously, my
Yeah.
sister is going to look out for me. And they don't always. I have some that I've represented real estate attorneys that think they know everything. And, but, I've represented realtors. That's tough, right? There's an ego thing there for sure. If I was going through a divorce, God forbid, I wouldn't want somebody else selling my house either. I get it. But the thing is how can I be neutral if I'm going through a divorce, right?
Yeah.
How can you? So there's a lot of different ways that it can happen. Some just the attorneys just strong arm them and say, we need Bridget. I have one particular case right now. The attorneys are calling it World War III. I'm not going to even go into the details with it because you're all going to be crying. But it's been probably one of the most difficult ones I have ever seen. And this family is going to never be the same. But the attorney insisted we have to use Bridget. She is the only one who's going to be able to do this. This is going to be bad. And throughout the process, I'll share with you guys just being vulnerable. This one has been so difficult that I'm even questioning, like, "Oh, am I going to be able to do this?" And then I have to keep reminding myself, I am the best person to do this. If there's a way to get this deal done, we're going to do it. And we just had a huge success, as sad as it is, last week, and I think we're actually going to be able to get this deal closed. And it's by far the hardest I've ever done. But the amount of gratitude that you get and fulfillment from helping the most vulnerable people is very hard to describe. I don't always get the big thank you. Sometimes they're so bad that we close escrow and they won't even take my call that we've closed to congratulate them. And you have to remember, we are meeting these people at the absolute worst time in their life. Of course, I'm not going to put them on a drip campaign afterwards or invite them to client parties. I am a painful memory. Even if I helped them and went above and beyond, you have to remember it's not about you, it's about them. And my business comes from the attorneys. I'm not trying to add a bunch of these people in my database. The attorneys are the ones that are bringing me the business. So that's something that I think is helpful to remember when you're dealing with this vulnerable group of people. So, so let's talk about education. So as I said, I started teaching MCLEs or CLEs, depending on what your state calls them, to attorneys years ago. And here are some of the tips I have if it's something that you're passionate about. First of all, if you are going to teach attorneys, let me tell you, they will put you through the ringer. You need to have a good amount of divorce listings under your belt and have a solid system before even attempting this. But what I've realized they don't want to be sold to. It cannot be a sales pitch about how great Bridget is. She's the best. She's going to do all the things, right? It can't be about that. But they need to be educated and they want to be educated. And sometimes they don't know what they don't know. I just taught last week at a clinic, a legal center here in San Diego County that primarily represents men. And a lot of times men, just to be kind of general, is when it comes to custody or things related to the house, sometimes they feel like they get kind of pushed off to the side. And so it was really important for me to explain my role as a neutral to them and to explain how, as a certified divorce real estate expert, I can help ensure that their clients are treated the same way, regardless of whether they're on title and all of that. Um, so it's important for you to kind of understand who your target is, who your audience is, and what you're going to teach them. If you're going to teach CLEs, you do need to get approved through your state bar. And if you're changing anything in the class, like you want to tweak something or an attorney gives you some good feedback, you have to get it reapproved. So you have to get it reapproved. Depends on the state. Here in California, our approval process is pretty rigorous. Depends on your state how hard it is to get approved. But you want to find topics that are relevant to the attorneys, and you have to keep the documents for like 7 years afterwards. And if you do anything wrong, your attorneys don't get their credit from you, and then they're upset. So you can go just teach a class to attorneys, but if you want to do it for CLEs and for credit, you need to be very careful that you do it the correct way. And I can't even take credit because I didn't get approved. The CDRE program took a group of us through a testing clinic, if you will, and they did it all for me. So I didn't have to do it. They just trained me on the content. I didn't even come up with the content. And then they did it all for me. So let me share with you what my very first class looked like. I'm now in my third class, and I have a fourth and a fifth class I'm probably going to start teaching next year. But here's the first one. This is called Real Property Matters in Divorce. So I always talk for just a few minutes about current market trends. Here's what's going on. You know, expect, your client's home is going to take, 2 months or 3 months or whatever it's going to take on average. I also talk about selling a house with when there's only one person on title. This is probably a whole MCLE in and of itself because this causes so many problems in family law cases and in real estate that, I mean, it boggles my mind that this still happens in this day and age, but it is a big problem when only one is on title. Number three, post-divorce title issues. You and I both know that co-owning a home with your ex is a bad idea. There's a lot of liability. There's a lot of problems that can come up. But a lot of times, the party's like, well, I just want to wait till my kids turn 18, right? And then we'll sell the house. And I get that too. I mean, I'm a mom. I'd probably want the same thing if I was in that spot. But there are a lot of problems, financial issues that can come up. I have a case. They just called me on Friday, and it's a multi-million-dollar property. And I went ahead and I ordered a title report earlier than I normally did because I smelled problems. And it turns out this property has 30 liens on it. 30 liens. Yeah. It's a multi-million-dollar property, and I think it might still be a short sale. But attorneys don't know to look. This case has been going on for, I don't even know how many years. I think 4, the wife told me. And the attorneys thought that there were 3 liens on the house. There's 30. Okay. So I have flarples on the liens, which is a family law real property lien. So I've got two past attorneys that are going to want to get paid out of this, and it might be a short. I mean, it's a mess. So attorneys need to understand these complex issues and how they affect the real estate world and how they impact their clients and the equity. And also court orders. I give them verbiage. There are a lot of issues that come up in family law cases, as I'm sure you can expect when you're selling a home. I tell them, here's the top seven, and here's all the fixes. Here's how you fix that. And essentially, then I end it at the end with, how do you use me as a family law expert? So if you've ever had any of these seven issues and you can't remember what I said about the verbiage, don't worry about it. Just call me. I've got my own court order. Oh, and by the way, you can't use the court order with anybody who's not a certified divorce real estate expert. So they know they have to use it with me or one of my colleagues. That's it. Cannot be used with a traditional realtor. And so that helps get me appointed to more cases because essentially, once again, I can take the headache out of the problem. That's it for my formal slides. I know in case any of you have questions and you want to take a real good basic class, it's like $270. You can go here, click on this link, thedivorceniche.com, or use the QR code. If that's something you want to learn, it doesn't give you a designation, but this is a really good, helpful class. If any of you are like, oh my gosh, I want to work with attorneys, then I would go to use my QR code here, or you can go to Get Divorce Certified. But the QR code is actually faster and you can apply to see if there's any space in your area. Here's a free download if anybody wants. And then that's it. Here's my info. And then Matt, I think you had a couple of closing things, right? Hopefully I still left you enough time.
So here's what I do want to do. If it's okay, I'm going to scrap my usual lightning round, or I might, anyways. There was a lot there and a lot that was really valuable. So I think first I want to open it up to see if there's any questions.
Can you scroll back to the QR code for the CDRE classes?
Oh,
It
sure.
went real quick.
Let me share my screen again.
Cassie, can you also grab these so that we can follow up and get those out to everybody? I'm sure you already are.
Bridget.
Absolutely.
There's the QR code.
Matt, let me know when.
Yep, go ahead, Mike.
Bridget, I really want to thank you for your time. It's obvious that you really know your stuff, and a really remarkable niche. And I learned so much through this. Why did you gravitate towards this niche?
Yeah, we haven't decided which pronunciation, but
I just wanted to cover the bases.
yep.
That is such a good question. First of all, thank you so much for your kind comments. That really means a lot. I will tell you that I was not passionate about this space whatsoever. My passion level was like -10. I was just starting to build a good traditional business. I was getting invited to baby showers and weddings. Why would I want to get involved in the divorce, right? And I remember sitting down with one of my attorneys. She was actually the one that forced me to get my first divorce designation. And we were having lunch, and I told her, we developed a friendship. I'd helped her buy her property in La Jolla. And I was saying, I really appreciate all the business you're giving me, and I'm going to continue to take care of your clients, but I'm not really passionate about working with people who hate each other. Like, it's not fun. And she said something to me that I will never forget. She said, Bridget, this isn't about you. You have a gift to help some of the most vulnerable clients that you can help. And if you don't help these people,
Who will?
Who will? Right? So a realtor with no training that,
Right.
screws up the case or makes all these mistakes. And what I realized at the time, I thought, oh, it's attorney Nancy saying to Bridget that she needs to do this for a niche, right? That's what I thought. Looking back, that was an entire industry of family law attorneys saying, help us, you guys aren't doing enough in our cases.
Right.
You need to do better. You need to elevate. You need to be better to help these vulnerable sellers who are desperate to get help from somebody who knows what they're doing.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. By the way, I love that answer. Um, I started doing a ton of short sales right before the banking crash because I sort of saw that wave coming. But there was a point in time where somebody came and knocked on my office door and was chit chatting. And they actually asked me the question, why do you do all the dirty work? And I said, well, first of all, if I was sensitive, I'd be offended by that because these are folks with real estate problems. And I'm pretty sure solving real estate problems is what we do for a living. Secondarily, I'm pretty sure in the next 18 months, dirty work is all we're going to have to do. But it's funny that how the perception can be sometimes. To your point, these are people that are in very vulnerable situations that happen to be attached to real estate. And I would argue any of those scenarios are our greatest opportunity to show up and add value, as long as we take the time to educate ourselves and know how to do it and do it really well.
You know, you bring up a really good point about short sales, which I think 2026, I'm probably going to start doing short sales again. I have a few cases that I'm like, ugh. But when I first started working in this niche, I was pretty quiet about it for about 10 years. I was embarrassed. I was scared that people would see me as an opportunist, that I was going after the divorce people. And it was funny. After I became a certified divorce real estate expert in 2020, I finally just came out of the closet of hiding, saying, "This is what I'm doing now." And the response was the exact opposite. I'd started getting calls from clients, "Hey, I have a friend who's going through a divorce." And of course, they want to talk to me like I'm an attorney giving free advice. I'm like, "Nope, I'm not an attorney. I can talk to you about real estate, but and I can talk to you about the basics, but I can't give you legal advice." But it's actually, and even just clientele like saying, that is so incredible that you work in that space. Like that has to be some of the most complex transactions. And so, traditional real estate feels like cake for you, which it doesn't. But I always thought I might lose my traditional real estate business. And that's why I was so secretive about it for a long time. And that has not been the case. There's no way I would be in Gary's top group if I didn't have such a large business. I mean, this year it's 60% of my GCI. Last month I hit MREA. There's no way I would have been able to do that if that wasn't even a goal of mine, or even in my.
Wait a minute, I have to pause you for a minute. So you hit MREA last month?
Yeah.
Congratulations. When you sent me the bio, it was on track too. So you officially hit it.
Yes, thank you.
It.
And there's no way I could have done it without a niche. And so whatever niche you want to work in, Gary Keller will tell you on stage, I don't know how many times, if you want a big business, you gotta go small. And I always thought that is just BS. How can you have a big business if you go small? But it turns out Gary was right. He was right.
Yeah, he tends to be. He tends to be. So, okay, we are out of time, but I have one more
and
question.
I just want to throw out, Matt,
sir,
you continue to bring us value.
I appreciate
here in New England, man.
I appreciate that. That means a lot.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Okay, so one more question before we ask everyone to unmute and show you some love. I'm going to skip the lightning round, but there's one important question I do not want to miss, which is, what is a perfect referral for you? And how would somebody get that referral to you?
Well, I love happy buyers and sellers too, guys. So if you know anybody looking to buy or sell in San Diego County, I just do San Diego County, let me know. Or if you know somewhere where I teach this class all over the country, if you know a market center or a region where I should be teaching, please make an introduction. I would love that too. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Cassie, Bridget, I'm going to follow up, make sure we have your contact information, and with your permission, I will share that out. If you do want to put the best contact in the chat before we end here, we can do that. And while Bridget is doing that, if you guys want to unmute, show some gratitude, some love for Bridget contributing all this time to us.
Thank you, Bridget. I have been fangirling for a little while. I've been told to meet you over and over again, so we're overdue.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Bridget, I can't tell you how much I appreciated. Tons of value in a short period of time. So thank you very much. Happy holidays to you. Happy holidays to everybody else. And we will see you in 2026.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks,
Bye,
Bridget.
everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Happy
Bye.
holidays.